Could I have everybody's attention? Good evening, everybody. Glad to see everyone here this evening. We're going to go ahead and get started so we can be pretty timely. I know everyone's schedule is very, very, very busy, and so we want to make sure we make good use of our time. My name's Darren King. I'm the city manager for the city of East Point, and we're thanking you to be here for our second community meeting for the Microsoft development. And so before I get started, I want to also introduce all of our other members of our team, and I'm going to bring our directors up, and they'll introduce the members of their team for the city of East Point. I also want to acknowledge all of our elected officials who are here from our city. Councilmember Stephanie Gordon from Ward D, and we have Councilmember Joshua Butler from Ward D as well. I'm trying to see if I'm missing anyone so far. No, I think that's everyone who's here. Oh, I think the mayor just walked in. Mayor Dina Holiday Ingram. There you go, Mayor. All right, make sure I don't miss anybody else. All right, great. All right, I am going to ask our directors to step up here for just a minute. Now, these are the directors who are involved with our planning, permitting process. I want you to see their faces, and I'm going to have them introduce their teams. I'm not going to ask the team to stand up. I mean to come up, just to stand up and wave your hands when acknowledging. All right? All right. Thank you, guys. All right, you're good. You're good, you're good. All right, our Fire Chief Corey Thornton. We also have our Planning Community Development Director, Kimberly Smith, and we have our Water and Sewer Director, Ms. Melissa Echeverria. So they're our directors who are involved with our planning and permitting process. And so I want them to acknowledge, starting with the chief, the members of their team, so you can just see who they are by face, and just wave your hands when they acknowledge who you are. I'm starting with the chief.
Member with the fire department that handles the blasting permits and all prevention is Chief Marcus Anderson.
Oh, you want? Well, you know what, Chief? I just had somebody ask you to come forward so they can see you. Come on forward so they can see you, Chief. Come on forward. Come on down. All right. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, my name is Kimberly Smith again. I have with me today Herbert Bush, which is our project manager. I'm sure a lot of you may have talked to him, and I have Miss Taylor Solomon in the back. We have our senior planner and our associate planner here.
Show your face. No, come on up. They said they want to see who you are. Come on up. All right.
Herbert and Taylor.
Good evening. In the Water Resources Division, the Stormwater Division is responsible for issuing the land disturbance permit once the project has met all of the criteria of the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission. And we're also responsible for the site from the first initial phase of land disturbance, and we follow it until the site has met final stabilization or is prepared to file a notice of termination with Georgia EPD. And I have Reza Oral, please come. He is the floodplain engineer of the Stormwater Division. I have Mr. Richard Randolph, which is the city engineer for water resources. And I am looking for Armand Jenkins, who is our acting stormwater manager. He's the one who is actually inspecting the site every single day to ensure that it's in compliance with the land disturbance permit.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. I want to make sure they got a chance to see each. Yes. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
What are, since you've taken away all the trees, since you've taken away all the trees, what is going to be your thing for flooding? You know, that the trees, they were there to take care of the flooding. So I've seen a lot of digging, but I don't see those big, you know, things that water runs through.
So in the initial phase, when they started tearing down the trees, that was to install their initial BMPs and for storage, for flooding and keeping sediment on site. Oh, I'm sorry, and I apologize. I've just been doing this a long time. BMPs are best management practices. So the Georgia Erosion and Sedimentation, they have a manual that they put out called the Green Book, and in there are best management practices that people are able to put on their plan review for approval. And those plans have been already approved for erosion and sedimentation on site, which is henceforth why we released their LDP. They met the state requirements.
Where does that water go?
It goes into the sediment bases on site. So right now, they have their initial, and they're placing in for storage capacity for their sediment bases, which are temporary sediment basins.
And the sediment does what?
It collects in those sites. Yep, it collects in those ponds, those sediment basins.
Well, tell me something. We're getting ready to have some pretty heavy storms here coming our way. What are they going to do with all that water? I mean, is that going to flood our properties or anything? We're very close to, we're 4275, 4265. We're very close to where you guys are digging. So I just wonder.
Okay, so before the site was issued a land disturbance permit, they have to meet our criteria of our floodplain and storm management ordinance that we have in the city. So that deals with the flooding issues. But as far as the topography and the grade of the land, when they're in the initial phase, everything is supposed to drain specifically to those sediment basins where the sediment collects and it releases water at a non-erodible force through outlet control structures.
Did you know prior to that they were going to devastate the land like they did and tear down the trees? All we see now is red dirt and the sky. That's all we see, and it's horrible. There's no trees, no nothing. They just tore down everything like, we weren't even a community. I don't understand how they were allowed to do that.
And so that's not necessarily a question for me per se. I am just the water and sewer director. So what we do is the plans are sent to the state of Georgia. We review the plans to meet the criteria in-house. And if they're able and they meet those criteria, we cannot hold the land disturbance permit. The land disturbance permit is tied to the laws and regulations with the state of Georgia. So we come in kind of after the fact.
All right, and we'll have Microsoft also come up and answer some questions as well. Before I move on, is there any other questions that anyone has of our team at all at this time? Okay. Yes, ma'am. We sure do. We sure do. But before they leave, I want to make sure if you want to ask anything right now that you have that opportunity to. Okay. Well, thank you, team. You can go have a seat. Thank each and every one of you. What? Hold on. You have one for?
Question for the planning
Planning
and
director.
developmental department. I called there a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking them who was digging across the street from the soccer park.
I don't have a response to that, but I can definitely look into it.
Well, it's a planning and development. So you don't know what is. Yeah, it's right. The soccer park is on one side, and then someone, whoever answered the phone said, "I believe it's Microsoft."
Can I talk with you sidebar after that so I can get detailed information and I'll have a response for you?
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, sir. I'm going to come back here.
No, I don't need a microphone.
Oh, yo, okay. Okay.
I don't have a question,
Yeah.
but I do have a recommendation. And that is that in the future, that the representatives from Microsoft please wear a name badge.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, yes, ma'am. We can do that.
Are there any more handouts?
Any handouts do you? Do we have some handouts on the table there? Definitely can get you. Okay, let's bring some of those in, definitely. The fire chief?
Do you know when they're going to start blasting?
Right now, we have the permit ready, but there's certain things that they have to do for our water and sewer department. So the permit hasn't been issued as of yet right now.
So how long is this going to be before they start?
Well, we won't know until they
Approximately.
actually come in to get the permit.
That they have to come in and get the permit?
They'll have to get the permit from us, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Okay. And could you pass out some more of those agendas? Anybody else didn't get an agenda they'd like to see, please just pass those around, and so that everyone can get a copy. Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate that. All right. Well, if there's a couple more questions.
So are you saying there isn't a project schedule that's available to the city?
Is there a schedule? They're going to talk about that today. They're going to talk about, Microsoft is going to talk about that today. Yes. Yes. Any other questions before we move forward? Yes.
So
Yes.
I understand you said you're going to give her a sidebar, but several of us in our community are concerned because it's not only that area that's clearly now designated for Microsoft, but the area we want to mention slightly down the road, not even a half a mile. It looks like it's just one big project, so we're trying to understand, has that also been appropriated by Microsoft, or is that something totally different? Is what we want to understand. Are you not able to answer
We'll
that?
need to get detailed information about which space you're talking about which parcel you're talking about. Because
Are the
you're just-
Microsoft representatives?
Yes, they are.
They're going to speak in a moment after the questions are answered.
Yes, we're going to get you that answer because that is just across the street. It's just right, same side, same. So that's a good question. Yes, we can definitely get you an answer to that too.
And we're going to show some maps, which maybe we're not sure what you're talking about, but the map should show the areas, and then that could really help.
Okay.
Is this the time to ask the benefit for the community?
It's on the agenda for tonight. Definitely. Yes.
One question for Ms. Smith or for yourself. I looked and I couldn't figure out how to access the ordinances, the zoning ordinances. So I'll ask either of you, is there an ordinance that dictates how far from residential property industrial or commercial development can be? I can't find that in the ordinance, but I know it's there somewhere.
Yes, it is. Kim, talk on that.
Landscape table on Muni codes.
I'm sorry.
The Code of Ordinances and our zoning ordinance for the city is held in a Muni code company, municode.com. And so you just do a search on East Point and Muni code, and you'll find all of the ordinances for the city.
Yeah, I found the listing, the numbers and the description, but I didn't see the text. That's what I'm looking for, to actually read the code.
It is found on municode.com, doing a Muni code, MUNICODE.com. And if you do a Google search for Muni code, City of East Point, it'll be one of the options for you to choose.
And where in the code would I find the specific explanation of how far a development can be from a residential property?
I would further do a search once you get into Muni code for buffer tables, and that should be one of the options that would allow you to see what the standards are.
So I'm sorry, but I have some of the same questions. So is no one here able to answer that question without her having to refer to a search, resort to a search? Because I would imagine those are things, answers that should be readily available. This is something that has been approved. And we should know what codes by which it was approved. And I would imagine someone in the room should be able to speak to that
Yes.
on hand and not her having to go research that. That's why we're here. We can research, we can
Yeah.
do research, but we expect answers.
No, staff can do that for you. And so we can do that for you. So what I want her to do is we're going to let these guys start the presentation, but I want them to do that while you're here and show you that information so you can have that. Because I agree, and I appreciate it, because I look in there and sometimes I have to say, where is this at? And I'm the manager, so that can be anyone's question. That's what we're here for. Yeah. Well, these are the resources. And they're the human resources, but they're the resources. And so we're going to get you that. So why don't we do this? So Kim, why don't we just pivot off to the side, and then we can get you that information, and then we'll also make sure that before you leave that we can kind of put eyes on it for you, because we'll have time, because they're going to do their presentation. We'll get that for you now. All right? And thank you, Kim. Thank you, Chief. Melissa and all the team, thank you guys. I appreciate that. But we'll have, do me a favor, pull off to the side and make sure you get Ms. McGriff and our other resident.
I have
Okay?
the notes.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. All right, it's okay. And Ms. Webster. Ms. Webster. They all want to know. So we'll get them all that information. So why don't we do that, and we can get that information for them while we're having them do their presentation, okay? All right, thank you, Kim. So she's going to do that right now, and we're going to get you that information, okay? Thank you for those questions. I appreciate that. And if there's any others that we have as we pivot along, by all means, let us know, and we're going to get you that too. That's what we're here for tonight. All right, with that being said, thank you, staff. So Kim, just pull them aside. You get that. Okay. All right, what I want to do right now is I want to introduce, have the team come forward, but I'm going to give Michael Trader, who's like the lead man for the construction team, he's going to come forward. He's going to introduce the team that they've assembled tonight. And thank you guys for being here tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you all for being here. And then they're going to start their presentation, and they'll be able to answer some of the questions that we've had so far tonight. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. So I'm going to turn it over to Brendan to kind of walk through the presentation, but I would just ask that you allow us to get through the presentation, and then we'll answer all your questions or try to answer them as best we can. So if you could just bear with us and we'll get through the presentation. So once again, I'm Michael Trader. I'm the construction project manager, so ultimately responsible for the day-to-day activities out on the site. And then with me is Paul. He's our community engagement leader.
And I will take the mic from you. Thank you, Michael. Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Inglis. I am with Microsoft's data center team with our community engagement group. And so thank you for being here. To the mayor, to the council members, thank you also for being here. We also appreciate the city staff and the help that they've been in this project and the assistance they're giving us to make sure that we build this project correctly and in accordance with East Point's rules and regulations. And so let me be clear, we do adhere to those rules and regulations, and that is our priority, to build this in the right way. I'll introduce some of the other people on the team. Brenda Gallagher, who you'll hear from later, and who you saw at the August meeting. He's with our land development organization. He'll be handling the middle part of the presentation. Diane Strom is in the back. She's also with our community engagement team. Aaron Ruffin, Mr. Ruffin is over here with his hand up. He is with our permitting team. He'll be the permitting lead on this particular project. Also with us from our government affairs team is Terrence Herron, and so we're glad to have Terrence here with us as well. Am I missing anybody? No. Okay. Okay. Since we were here in August, we took your feedback. If you remember, I was here at that first meeting. I didn't talk much. I was over furiously taking notes, so hopefully I have captured a lot of your comments and feedback. We've also gotten additional comments since the meeting, and so our goal here is to answer those questions, hopefully give you more information than we did in the August meeting. The August meeting was largely hearing from the community, and so this is our opportunity to respond to you. So we heard questions about the community benefits. We will talk about that later here in the presentation. We heard questions and comments about the data center design and community impacts, and so we will address some of those, as well as the communication or the construction activities and the way we have or have not communicated with the community. And so we've done some work on that as well. So just quickly, some things that we have done. So one of the things we heard loud and clear was the construction entrance that we had directly across from Mrs. McGriff's home was not acceptable. And so Michael and his team, the construction team, went and looked at ways that they could alleviate the impact of that construction entrance. So at the top of our property, there has been work done to go ahead and accelerate the construction of that entrance. And so some of your questions about stuff that's happening up by the sports park may be that, Brendan can kind of highlight that in his part of the presentation because he's got some maps. But that was done so we can move construction traffic away from there. Now, we haven't been able to eliminate all the trucks coming in and out. We were out there today, and I saw a couple of trucks with mulch from some of the trees that had been taken down coming out of there. But we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. And so, so that's one of the things that we've done. We also heard when we were here in August that you guys needed more time for the pre-blast surveys, so we've extended that timeline so that those that wanted to get house inspections could do so. So we hope that was helpful. We've also launched a page on our community blog dedicated to the East Point project. If you go to local.microsoft.com, whack East Point, you'll find information there. That's a place that we will publish updates as they're happening. If you picked up one of our FAQ documents, that address should be in there, as well as a mailbox where you can send questions or comments that will come directly to the Microsoft team. Diane and I are on the receiving end of those, and we'll, as well as some of our other colleagues, and we'll answer them as best we can, and we'll route them to our colleagues on the Microsoft team if we don't have the answers. But that's one place where you can communicate directly with us and the project team. And then here tonight, we're here to continue to answer your questions. So what's on the agenda? We'll hit 3 topics. One is, what does the data center look like? And you'll see there's a lot of signboards around here, and we're happy to spend time with you kind of explaining what the various views are. We hope that with those visuals, it will give you a little more clarity about what to expect. Now, I know that during construction is disruptive. That's the way it is with any construction project. But once the construction is done, you'll start to see the way that this is going to take shape, and hopefully that is much less impactful on your lives. We'll also talk about the construction activities, what's going on now, what's coming, the timeline that somebody asked for. We've got a timeline in there. A lot of that is dependent on the permits that we get from the city and the reviews. So it's incumbent on us to be able to answer the city's questions, make sure that they feel comfortable that we are meeting their requirements, and then we can go forward. But we'll give you a bit of a timeline there. And then we have a section on benefits for East Point and the surrounding area, and we'll talk about that. And then at that point, we'll open it up for the community Q&A. Now, I know that you guys are not shy, and you have lots of questions. So we would like to try to get through the presentation, write down your questions. We promise we'll stay here to answer all of them. So if we could do that, we'll be in good shape, I think, hopefully. Hopefully you walk out of here feeling better than when you walked in. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brendan, who's going to take the next section.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. And I wanted to thank the city and thank the city council, and I really wanted to thank the community for having us back here tonight to hopefully answer more of your questions, give some more information. Yeah, as Paul said, we took a lot of notes. When we were here a month ago, we definitely didn't have all the information that we could go through. We're hoping to address that tonight. Maybe information overload. We're definitely trying to go heavy on the detail and also really trying to focus on images. I don't want to be out here reading stuff to you. I just want to be able to try and convey through the images, a bit of a better sense of what the data center will look like and what's going on out there. So, going through, so starting out here, this is a high-level overview, just looking at a high shot of what the data center campus will look like at full build-out. I know last time we were here, we had a bit of a cartoon graphic, didn't really give a good understanding of what an actual data center looks like. This is the overview, the more realistic renderings. Instead of a box, we have the actual substation there. Instead of just boxes, we have what the data center halls will look like, essentially server halls. So this is a high level, and we just want to dive in a little bit more and show some of the additional detail. I would add, I think we've already pointed out, it's pretty obvious, but we do have a lot of graphics that we put together here. We will be staying afterwards, socializing with everyone. So we're going to go through it here at a high level, but really encourage everyone to get up, look at the graphics, ask us as many questions as you would like, and we'll really try and convey as best we can. So here we're just going to kind of go through some of the phases of development to give you a bit of an understanding of what it's going to look like over time. So if you can just see up here, the little ones, what that's essentially identifying is when we talk about the first phase, and a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight is going to be the first phase of development because that's what's in front of the city at the moment. That's what's been decided in terms of permits. That's the work that's going on out there. We want to provide information about all the work there. We're not just going to talk about first phase, but that's what's going on right now, and that's what's in front of the city at the moment. So when we talk about the first phase, we're really talking about the substation here, and then this first building, which is the farthest plan south. As we go a little bit further in time, you're looking here at B. This is 1B. This is the southern construction entrance. This is the one was the main construction entrance initially. We have moved a lot of, I would say almost all of that construction up to A, which is now our primary construction as well as our primary entrance. Ultimately, B will always be there because we need a secondary access for emergency. But once we get through construction, the traffic's moved away from there for now. But ultimately, we will just be using that as a secondary access, only used for emergencies. And then when we talk about phase 1, we also have phase 2 and subsequent phases, which are essentially, we break our developments out into phases broken down by buildings. So when we talk about additional phases, we're talking about the second and third building, as you can see up on the plan here. So we did want to provide the actual site plan that was filed with the city as part of our permits. Again, probably not a lot to dwell on this side, just to show you, what's actually in front of the city. They have a lot more detailed information to work through. And again, this is focusing on our first phase of development. Oh, yes. Actually, you should be able to see them here. Or maybe, Michael, do you want to just... Yeah, because there was a question earlier on that. What's going to happen when it starts raining now?
So we contain all water on site.
Help me out
Yes, ma'am.
and point out Ben Hill Road and
This is Ben Hill Road, right? Loops around.
where is that entrance?
So this is the entrance. If you drive by, you see where the red line is. You'll see concrete now. That's where they're building the retaining wall. And then this is the primary entrance for the data center. So we have, if you were to drive in now, there'd be trailers here, and it's all a bunch of dirt. And then there's a big mound, kind of right in here, there's a lot of rock, and then right in here, there's a lot of rock, and then here, there's a lot of rock.
So
Obviously,
to
you
your
can't
left,
see it.
is that where the soccer park is?
Yeah, I think I saw a sign there saying soccer development there, yeah. So that, if that helps orient.
Now, do I understand you to say that where the red line is marked, after construction is completed, that will no longer be a primary entrance, it will be emergency only?
Correct, yes.
Yes,
That is,
So your primary entrance will be where?
right here.
After construction?
So
Yeah,
this is the primary entrance now, even during construction.
yeah, we've shifted everything up there.
When
And
it's completed though, the primary entrance is still gonna be on Ben Hill Road?
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll write down my question.
And, okay, I would also note that, and I'm sure we'll cover this later in questions, but Ben Hill Road is the only road adjacent to our site. So we're actually only bordered by Ben Hill Road and then private property. So it's actually the only way we can access the property.
And what about on the Wilkemore side, where the other construction, where the other commercial property?
Yeah, that's down here.
Yeah, and that's private property between us.
So our property will
Yeah.
around here, and then this is other property.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'll repeat the question, but I do want to just see if we can make sure we get through the material before we go into too many questions. But essentially the question was about where's Ben Hill Road, where do we access today, and where will our primary entrance be? And that is here on Ben Hill Road. And some of the clarification we were providing is that I believe Welcome Roads are down here, but Ben Hill Road is the only road that's actually adjacent to our property. So where essentially our property only touches Ben Hill Road and then other private property. Okay, so one of the very good feedback we got last time was, trying to provide some kind of level of detail when we're talking about distances, and I'm worse than anyone when it comes to these sort of giant renderings, understanding like how far this actually is. So we've put some distances on here to try and actually give a feeling of how far they are and give some detailed information about that. Again, there's a lot of detail here. We've got some examples up there. We did just want to give some kind of a concept of how far away everything is. So, I think one of the key metrics that we've been using, again, feet doesn't mean a lot by itself, is that if you imagine 360 feet to be about the size of a football field, including the end zones, and so that kind of gives you some level of understanding of how far they actually are set back from both the road and the residences here. So I think one of the key call-outs here, without running through all the dimensions, is that the substation itself, at the closest point to any of the neighbouring residences, is still about the length of a football field away. So set back from the road, but also from other residences. So if you can kind of imagine a football field as a distance there. And, when we're talking about the closest point of the data center to some of the residences, again, we're talking about over 100 feet, I think, at even the closest point here where there'll be screening, and everywhere else is sort of further than that. So if that helps with any kind of an understanding of the distances, we're talking about a kind of a football field away from the nearest residences when we're looking at the substation.
And I know you'll have lots of questions on this. One of the drawings that we have over here has this picture, so we're happy when we get into the question and answer to have direct conversations with you with that drawing, if that helps.
Yep. And again, we'll be walking around afterwards, and we definitely want to have a lot of questions and kind of do our best again to try and convey what these kind of distances look like. We've got some renderings here as well. I don't know if anyone has any better analogies than a football field. But this time I think the renderings we're looking as well kind of gives you some kind of an understanding.
I have a question about this. That 307, is that 307 feet from her house or 307 feet from the Neil Road? Which one is it?
That's 307 feet from the house. So if you can see here, it's about 135 feet from the road. Oh yeah, sorry. The question was, when we look at these dimensions, where are we measuring from? So when you look at the 307 feet there, that's 307 feet from the house up there, the residence, and there's 135 feet back from the road there.
Are these renderings with the distance and so forth, are they on the site that you have given us that we can access, or?
Yeah, they're on the drawings back here.
Yeah, but are they going to be posted?
We could,
Yes.
we can do that. They're
Yeah.
not there today.
Yeah. No, thanks. And look, while we're talking about the substation, I think that's an important thing that we want to talk about. That is what a lot of the questions, a lot of concerns. We certainly understand there are a lot of concerns about the substation location. We do want to provide a lot more information here, including how far it is here from Bound Hill Road, from neighbouring residences. There's a lot of information on the FAQ sheets that we've shared as well, a bit more about the questions that have been asked about the substation. In terms of its location, we did want to give you a bit of a better understanding, we hope, of like the thought process that goes behind the location of the substation. So a couple of the key things here to note is that for spatial considerations, you can kind of see here, there's a gas line running down here at the south end. It's basically denoted by where you can't see trees here. That's a gas line easement. So that there has to be a certain setback from that gas line easement for the substation. And also there's a lot of wetlands down there which we're specifically avoiding because they're jurisdictional wetlands. So because of that, there's some spatial constraints that kind of push the substation up to that planned northern part of the site. Another additional consideration is Georgia Power's ability to access the substation. We want to provide direct access to them so they can access the substation as quickly as needed during any kind of emergency. So access to the substation for Georgia Power, and also just about location of where the substation can fit on site are some of the main reasons which driven us to put the substation there where it is. We do want to then provide a bit of additional information about some of the screening and some of the mitigations that we're putting in place to try and limit the impacts of the substation to the surrounding residences. And so one of the main things that we're utilizing in terms of screening and mitigation is native vegetative screening along the whole boundary of the site, but especially in front of the substation. This is some of the stuff you can see in some of the renderings we'll walk through, and we'll give you a bit of a better understanding as we look at the renderings of what these trees look like. Some of the information we wanted to provide was, what kind of trees are we putting in that vegetative screening, what kind of trees we're using here, some of the dimensions of the trees here. So I think one of the key things to note is that we're using a mixture of evergreen trees and semi-deciduous trees. We want to make sure that any screening we put in there has, the potential to screen the substation and the site as much of the year round as possible. And also we're trying to make sure that we put in trees of a certain maturity and of differing heights to make sure we achieve a good level of screening for the whole site there. So here we're giving you some examples of some of the trees that we're looking at putting in at site. We have some evergreen trees here. Again, this is looking for some of the main screening. We're going to be installing these at 8 to 10 feet in height. So already, and that I should note is about the maximum height that we can actually put them in at the start. And then we're also installing canopy trees installed at about 16 to 20 feet in height when we first put them in. So that will provide that initial screening. And then these trees variously grow at about 1 to 3 feet per year. And we've selected these trees especially to try and identify fast-growing trees, to identify, to accelerate as much that screening as we can as we put them in. Yeah, just a drink of water, actually. Thank you. Sorry. In addition to the trees, which we'll actually be using all around the site, which you'll be able to see in some of these renderings that we put up here, we are looking at substation screening as a barrier fence to screen the actual substation. So we're working with Georgia Power on this, and on the kind of screens that they use. Here's an example of one that they would use. It's a safe fence, it's non-conductive barrier. That would be in front of the substation, between the substation and Ben Hill Road, to provide additional aesthetic screening, as well as some additional noise mitigation as well. There are options for this. This is just an example of what could be used to give you an idea of what might be there in front of the substation and behind the trees between the substation and Ben Hill Road. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some of the views of the data center campus. And again, I said this before, but these are all around here. We posted these up, so can give a high-level view here of what we're trying to show with the renderings, but then encourage you guys to walk around, and we'll be walking around with the renderings afterwards, answering any specific questions. So these are the renderings we put together to show what the data center will look like in the future. We've tried to show with each of the renderings day one, which is essentially what it's going to look like once we put the trees in, and then a rendering of what the trees will look like in maturity and the kind of screening that they'll provide. So here we're looking at the data center. You can see down, there's a legend here, but essentially from that main entrance. So basically, it's where the soccer park is. So looking across from the soccer park. One thing we should note is that if you look at that, the day one view there, that's actually one of the future phases in the background. So we'll be putting in this screening earlier than when we're doing work on the actual phase there to try and achieve more of this canopy cover ahead of the actual data center construction going on up there. So here, again, using a mixture of the semi-deciduous and the evergreen trees, basically planting them at the tallest maturity we can. And then, basically this is what they'll look like at full maturity, which, is aimed to screen almost all of the data center and the site.
So that's what it will look like over there after a year or two.
So it's hard to put a time on the timeline that that'll look like. I think as a rough guide, again, we're choosing as fast growing trees as we can. They grow at around about 1 to 3 feet per year. And we're selecting the most mature and the fastest growing trees they can find, and then planting them at the tallest height they can go in. And then, it varies on the species, but we're looking at about 1 to 3 feet every year.
So you won't be able to see the building like you see it to the left?
At full maturity, that's correct. Yes. All right, so here is another view, and you can see the two there. So basically this is looking from the old construction entrance, which will be the emergency entrance. That's opposite the residence drive there. This is on the corner of our site. Again, this is close to the substation, looking in at one of the closest points of the substation to the road. And you can see there, the day one view is once we plant the trees, and then here as they grow to maturity, they provide additional screen. One thing that actually isn't depicted in this rendering is what we've been talking about as optional substation wall to go behind the trees. And when I say optional, we're looking at putting that in with Georgia Power. The optional part is like what that would look like, based on the kind of wall that gets chosen. But that'll provide additional screening there for the substation equipment, as well as additional noise mitigation.
It says Georgia Power has not yet determined where the power lines will be on Ben Hill Road.
Yes.
They haven't decided where they're going to put that.
So they're looking at some options to bring the power lines in to the substation. It'll be somewhat restricted based on the substation location. My understanding is just looking for paths that have the minimal impact. I should note that they'll definitely be coming over an area which is away from residential. As in, I think there were some questions about power lines being directly overhead of residential. They won't be, they can't be. In fact, you need easements. Georgia Power doesn't put transmission lines over residences. So, but they are still working to try and finalize those routes with the intent of minimizing the impact and the shortest route to the transmission corridors. But a great question. This is our emergency entrance, yes.
Just a quick question. Is it possible for Georgia Power to put the lines underground?
I will have to defer to Georgia Power on that, only because I think that's something that they'll need to speak to.
Ask you about these data centers. That one right there is directly behind our home. Do they keep up noise at night? Do they make noise?
So
Do you hear the motors running and the...
the data centers themselves don't make noise, no. The server halls, they make very little noise. Yeah, basically you won't be able to hear it from the residents where they are. The noise is attenuated through the trees.
I would say the data center is, if you're trying to figure out what a data center is, a data center is like the hard drive in your computer. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's just a big hard drive that just stores data.
Yeah, and and again, I definitely want to make sure we answer all these questions, but I do want to get through all the because they're great questions and ones that we have good answers for. But just want to make sure we get through the presentation and give everyone else a chance to ask some questions as well. But I'll make a note of that one. Just going through the different distances, this is a bit farther up Ben Hill Road. Essentially what you'll see from the street, again, the power lines coming in hasn't been finalized. We're trying to give you some kind of an understanding of what it could look like once we plant the trees originally, and then as the trees grow to maturity, that additional level of screening to the substation equipment and what a substation looks like from the road. And also, I think key here is the sort of distance set back from the road as well. It's not up on the road, it's set back at a distance and behind the vegetative screening. Okay, and again, I'll say it many, many times, but we do want to go through the images in more detail with you all, and we'll be walking around and going through the images and answering any questions that people have specifically, especially when you have the chance to get up more closely to the renderings and have a look at them. So traffic is another question that was asked a lot about. Actually, in terms of industrial uses, traffic is one of the areas where we kind of punch above our weight in terms of industrial use. Unlike, say, distribution warehouses, which you guys are probably all too familiar with here, there is no around-the-clock truck traffic. When we're in operational phase, it's basically, I think someone said it today, put it really well, it's basically just people going to work. Like, there is some deliveries being done of some equipment, but day to day, it's just cars and people driving into the data center and going to work in the building, because there's a minimal amount of people per building. It's about 50 people per building across the period, so it's not all at the same time. And it's basically just the shift work of them going in to operate the data center when it's operational. So yeah, again, these are on staggered schedules, so it's not even 50 people at once, it's just staggered throughout the day. But it's really just operational people going into, it's actually far less people than would be going to, say, an office building.
And is that when it's operational or just during construction?
That is when it's operational. There is more construction, there's more vehicles during construction, as you can see them going through. We'll go through the construction schedule in a minute. That will obviously reduce as we get through construction and into operation. Okay, and now is a great segue to what construction activities are going on right now. We're going to cover the high level here and then encourage questions, and I've got Michael here to help me answer any questions as they come in. But really at a high level, what's going on at the moment is, again, I talked about the first phase of construction. At a higher level, we're adding a new entrance to help limit traffic. We actually have added that new entrance now, so really directing that traffic up to that main entrance. We've got ongoing delivery of equipment and materials. We've got the site clearing, including the rock removal. Again, the blasting work hasn't started. Actually, I have a second bullet point there, but rock removal is ongoing and site grading. We haven't started any blasting work. We're still reviewing the permit. The city's still reviewing the permit. We're working with the city to give them all the information they need. But no blasting activities have started. We won't obviously start those until we have the permit. And just to note there, that blasting is the most efficient way to remove rock. So really looking to get the blasting done is a quick way to get through some of the rock on the site and get through that construction phase. At the same time, the city is reviewing our building permit, which we filed with them. We filed the land disturbance permit, first two phases. They also have the building permit now, which they're reviewing. I think Paul already walked us through here, but essentially that takes us to the new construction entrance up the top. This is just some information on what the construction out there looks like, some of the standards that we utilize out there. Again, it's a large site, which it's helpful here in terms of traffic because we are able to do a lot of the staging on site to limit the on and off traffic. We have traffic control going on. We have crews mitigating dust and debris. We've got street sweepers. We have water trucks out there. We are doing daily checks to try and minimize and make sure we address all of the as much of the dust and debris as we can ongoing. We also have robust safety programs out there with our safety officers on site, which just also noting there that we have a better than industry average for safety on these heavy construction projects. And then here I think is one of the key slides. Really wanted to give you the construction timeline, what we're looking at. Here we're in now summer 22, early 2023. This is the stage we're in now. We're getting the general contractor mobilized. We're going through the site clearing. This is all the work that you see on the site at the moment. Basically going clearing the site, developing site access. Then beginning in December at the end of the year, again, this is all somewhat dependent on our permits getting approved and working with the city through that review process. But the next phase there, beginning in December, will be we start to develop the building pad, we start erecting the steel on site, we start enclosing the actual data center. This is where you start to see the actual building there. You start the delivery and installation of some of the server equipment, which is equipment that goes inside the building, and then completion of the power substation there. Then you can sort of see the little truck there denotes the kind of construction timeline, and then that takes us up to about the beginning of 2024. Which is when we really start the end phase of that first phase. We bring in the people to test the equipment that's already on site, completing the final approvals, completing the life safety measures, commissioning of all our equipment on site. That starts in 2024 and goes through till about 2025. So this covers the first phase of our construction. And then the additional phases are going to be dependent on when customer demand determines if we want to put up additional buildings there. Those will be the phases towards the back of the data center. And I think that's the end of the kind of design and construction slides. Again, looking forward to answering your questions. But I did want to hand back to Paul to let him just take us through some of the benefits for the city.
Cool. Thank you, Brendan. So we'll talk a little bit about the some of the benefits to the city and the surrounding area. So one of the big benefits is property taxes that will be generated by the project. The development agency for Fulton County estimated that our project over 10 years will generate $43 million in taxes. That's for the city of East Point, Fulton County schools, all of the taxing entities in this area. That's over and above the tax benefit Microsoft got from the economic development agreement that we signed with Fulton County and the state. That amounts to about $17 million in benefit to Microsoft, so it's about a 28% discount. But $43 million goes to new taxes for the area. Of that, about $1 million a year will be just for the city of East Point. That's part of that 43 million. So that's over 10 years. That will start about the time that whenever, when construction starts and we start developing the property and you're syncing with whatever your tax cycle is, whenever you guys do appraisals, then the property will start to get appraised, and then it will just increase then as we continue with development. Now that $43 million in tax benefit, that's just for phase one. That's just for the first building as well as the substation. If we develop the additional buildings, the phase two, phase three, there will be additional tax revenue. So that's over and above that initial benefit from phase one. In addition, there will be jobs, obviously, from construction as well as those that are going to be in the data center. We have had some outside agencies that have looked at the economic impact of data centers in other locations. Typically, what we find is that for every job from a data center project, there are 4 to 5 additional jobs that are created through the induced and indirect economic impact. So you have the direct impact from the Microsoft project, but in addition, you'll have additional jobs that are created from that. And then we'll have also community investments that we will sponsor related to digital skilling and environmental sustainability. A little bit of a look at the types of jobs. So on the construction side, there are skilled jobs for electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, and the rest of the occupations you see there. Inside of a data center, this is typically the type of jobs that you'll see. I will say there was a question about what does an entry-level job look like, and can people from East Point get jobs like that? And the answer is yes. And a typical entry-level data center worker, an IT tech, earns, and it kind of depends on the region and what the salaries are. But in our smaller communities, it's as much as $50,000 a year. It can be as much as $65,000 a year for that entry-level person, and then salaries go up for that for more skilled and management types of positions. So one of the things that we do, that we invest in to help to train people in the community to get jobs in the data center, is we have a program called the Data Center Academy. And if you go to datacenteracademy.microsoft.com, you'll see a little bit about what this program is. So we will work with a local education partner, and we are really close to announcing our education partner here in the Atlanta area. I can't speak of them tonight, but we will be talking about that soon. So we'll work with that education partner to set up the curriculum to teach the IT skills, the skills that are needed to work in a data center. The good part about this program is that if you go through it, you can work in any sort of IT job, whether it's in a data center or not. We also will provide scholarships and financial grants to students to go through this program. We focus our scholarships on those groups that are underrepresented in the IT industry. That includes women, it includes African American, Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous groups. So those are the targets for those scholarships. Then we also work with the education partner. We'll help them build a data center lab. So within the school, they will have a lab that looks like a mini data center, so students are able to train on the equipment that they would work on in a data center, and we donate that equipment to the school. We also have our GCs. They're building the project. They often will donate their labor to build that for the school. And then once it is all up and running, then we have a couple of additional pieces, which is we offer internships in the data center. So students coming out of the program will be able to get experience, internship experience inside the data center. So that will be an opportunity. And then the people who work at the data center provide mentorships to the students in this program as well as to local high schools. And I know talking with our community development team, one of the things that they've talked about, they do programs in STEM, which is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and math. They do STEM workshops in the local high schools. And they plan to do that here in East Point to help recruit for the Data Center Academy project. So that's one of the things that we do to try to help to bring in, make sure that people who live locally have a chance to work in the data center. And with that, that's our presentation. Now we're ready for Q&A. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I understand the importance and what the data centers can do. I think it's wonderful for the community. And it can be a great partnership. One of the concerns, and I still have it today, is the health of the people in the community. According to the summary, Georgia Power is saying there is no health risk, but it's not conclusive. And if you continue to research it, it's still ongoing. So how between Microsoft, Georgia Power, why couldn't there be, in one of the areas that I saw when I Googled and researched, is that the substation should be at least a mile from residential. Why isn't that more of a concern between Microsoft and Georgia Power? Why is it so close to people that are living there? And it is, I get they're saying it's not conclusive today, but it could be. So please help me understand that a little bit better.
Sure, and I would say that the studies that we've looked at, they are scientific peer-reviewed studies that show that the electromagnetic fields, EMF, from a substation are not harmful to residents.
But those findings can be manipulated to prove a point. Every day, that's what you do. You manipulate it so that it looks good. But as I read the statement, it's not conclusive. It's simply a study, and it's still ongoing, and that is a concern for me. I don't want to have health issues if I continue to live in the community. And the residents, they're less than they're feet. They're a few feet as opposed to a mile or so. So that's, I know you're going by that, but I don't think that's good enough, and that's my concern.
Okay, I appreciate your comment and your concern. I will say that if Microsoft thought that the substation or the data center project was going to harm your health, we wouldn't build it.
But you don't know.
Based on the science and the studies that we've looked at and we've evaluated, there isn't that issue. And I will tell you that Microsoft is a conservative company, and if we had a hint that there was that sort of problem, we wouldn't go near it.
So then why couldn't it be a definitive distance? Again, a mile, that's minimal. It's closer than a mile to their home. So that's what I'm saying, is that I get what you're saying, and I understand. I'm just saying that to me is not good enough. Microsoft can do better. Georgia Power should do better to maintain the health, to say we're not going to take a chance. We're not going to build close to residential.
Someone said put the lines underground. How come they can't run the lines underground?
So some lines can be run underground, but again, this is a conversation for the experts for Georgia Power. So they're continuing their community meetings on where to place those transmission lines, and so I would encourage you to talk with them.
When we met with Georgia Power, they threw it back on Microsoft and said it was dependent on them. When we,
They were your client.
right.
You say what goes. That's what they said.
The siting of the transmission lines is a work between Georgia Power and the community, and those community conversations are ongoing. Yes.
Thank you. So my question is related to the earlier questions. In other communities in which you build data centers, how far is the substation from other homes? Average.
It can be your feet like it is here. It can be further. It kind of depends on the neighborhood.
So again, that would be a question that I would like answered, is what is the average distance? Is it 750 feet or is 360 your average?
Is there a completed data center that we can go to see what a completed data center looks like?
Yeah, there are completed data centers. Are you talking about just going and seeing the outside or having a tour of the inside? Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, we have data centers in Southern Virginia, Northern Virginia, Des Moines, Iowa. No.
To be honest, this is one of three data center developments we're doing in Atlanta. We have two other developments at similar stages in two other cities proximate to here. And this is just the stage of our Atlanta region, what we call region. So when we say yes, we do operate like dozens of data centers existing, operating across the US and in fact across the world. Unfortunately, for that purpose, the phase of our data centers in Atlanta is in construction phase. So when we say we do have them, they are in other states. We have them in Virginia. We have, we have them all across the US. But that's just the ones that we have operating that you would be able to go and see.
Can you share with us the closest address that we can drive to?
South Virginia would be the closest one. I don't have the address off by heart, but we can definitely provide details on the location.
I think the response was rather patronizing because the average person is not going to drive to Iowa or Virginia. I would imagine her question meant relatively close. Your response was rather patronizing. So are you saying that for the Atlanta region, this is your first phase?
Yes.
So you don't have any remotely close in the Atlanta region?
We don't have any in the state of Georgia. We don't have any. I know there are data centers, probably getting a bit off topic. I know there are data centers in, I don't know, I assume there are data centers in Atlanta, Georgia. I know there are some in Alabama. Again, this is just kind of riffing off the back of my head. But yeah, for our data center operations, we would actually love if we had existing data centers, because that would make this a lot easier, because we could just sort of say, here's an example, here's what it looks like. We don't have them, unfortunately. We would love to build them with you all. So right now we're relying on renderings. I can certainly provide information. I would have to say it's probably going to be in a different state, only because of the state of our phases. But
I mean, I imagine this question was, are there any local that we could drive to set up? But it's not in Georgia. So that makes sense.
and one resource just occurs to me that we did put out about a year and a half ago is a virtual tour of a data center. Maybe it's definitely not as good as going and seeing one, but it is a very interactive experience we can share, where we actually take you to the outside and down into the server halls. So I'll make a note to share that with you all because actually it's a pretty cool video. But I'll find it and we can share that with you. And there might be some other information of actual videos we can show of what data centers look on the outside. So yeah.
I was just one of the people interested in seeing how typically on average they are positioned in distance proportion to someone's home.
Yeah, and again, I mean, we have, I think, probably hundreds of data centers in the US, so it's hard to just come up with an average. I do know that we have data centers, we have substations as close, if not closer. Again, when we say it's based on the community, it's more based on where the site is proximate to residential, but we do have other data centers where the substations are located just as close, if not closer. Yes.
How close are the substations and the electrical power centers to residents day in, day out? That's the issue.
Yeah.
That's the issue I see.
No, I fully understood. And I guess when I was saying data center, that I meant the substation itself, which we always have a substation on site, and we have sites where the substations are as close, if not closer, to residences. And again, we you know, there's always studies ongoing. We rely on the best studies out there. We work similar to Georgia Power, so we really use the best guidance there is out there. We are. It is in the stage where they're actually about, I want to say, a couple of weeks behind you, only because that's just the phasing we did of the way we kicked them off. We have one in Douglasville as well. Yeah, I have to defer.
It's right next to a house.
Yes. The question was, we have two other data center sites within the, I want to say, greater Atlanta, one in Palmetto and one in the city of Douglasville. And I believe one of them is adjacent to a residential.
Yeah, the one in Palmetto has less of a tree buffer than we have on this site. And the one in Douglasville, we back up to community, and we probably have a very similar buffer like what we have on this site, but still very close to a subdivision.
Do you have an address for those properties that you could share here today?
I mean, yeah, with their active construction sites. So yes, yeah. I don't have it. We'll share it with the point of contact. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions out the back. We build substations at every one of our sites. Affluent.
The demographics make a difference.
Yes, yeah, we have substations in San Antonio. We have substations. We have data centers with substations in the Bay Area. We have data centers with substations in all different kinds of demographics. And again, the site of our substation is driven by a whole range of things such as networking, access to power, existing zoning, etc. And we always then just utilize what the existing regulations and guidelines are to make sure we're citing it, correctly as per the zoning jurisdictions. But really, what drives us to where we are is about, industrial land that has access to our network, that has access to the power, water that we need for the site. Yes.
It doesn't look like that.
Yeah, and we actually have, if you look closely at some of the renderings there, you can see what the substation is going to look like from the street. You can kind of see the equipment behind. Obviously, we have screening there, but you can kind of see what that equipment looks like behind there a little bit more closely there.
What do you anticipate the revenue is for the city of East Point within the first 3 years? The Fulton County Development Authority, to my understanding, reviewed your application and approved it through the Fulton County Commission. However, I don't believe that they would indeed estimate that Microsoft's first phase would be of any amount. They merely accepted the information that Microsoft put in their grant application. So what do you anticipate for the citizens of East Point in the first 3 years, how much will be generated for the, as a benefit to the citizens of East Point in the first 3 years?
Yeah, I'm going to pass over to Paul on that. One thing I would say on that is that the numbers are actually put together by by Fulton County. They were numbers provided by Microsoft.
Yep, that was Fulton County's analysis. And I don't know how that breaks down in the first 3 years. I know it ramps up, but over the 10-year period, there's the $43 million in tax benefit to the taxing entities. So that would be the city of East Point, the school district, the county, and what other taxing entities are in this area.
Does that have a long tax?
I don't know.
Secondly, with respect to your employment opportunities, I hear you constantly talk about young people, students, but there is a substantial community of persons ages 40 and older who would probably love to receive as a benefit their opportunities to be a part of this experience.
Agreed. And so those opportunities we talked about aren't just for young people, like people in high school or college. I know one person specifically that is in that category. Her name's Brenda Cross. She was a floor manager for Walmart for like 25 years. So in her late 30s, decided she wanted to make a career change, went through our Data Center Academy program at Southside Community College in South Hill, Virginia, got her technical certificates, and got hired on as a DC tech, and she's still employed with us today.
You mentioned earlier that it was up to Georgia Power to determine if you could all bury power lines or not, correct? Well, during the last meeting, Georgia Power actually stated that it was up to you guys to pay the extra cost if you wanted to bury those power lines. Do you disagree or no?
We weren't at the last meeting, so...
I'm sorry?
We weren't at the last meeting.
But I mean, I'm quite sure you have meetings with each other, though, determining
it's
certain...
an ongoing discussion between Georgia Power and Microsoft on the incoming transmission lines. Again, we don't have the details of that. Georgia Power has more details. We have an energy team who works directly on that. But we know it's an ongoing conversation, and happy to provide feedback to the community.
Do you think not burying the power lines is safe for the community?
We think that the incoming transmission lines as they would never be installed in a way that wasn't safe to the community, that didn't adhere to all the regulations. No one here, at least on the Microsoft side, is an expert enough to talk about the power considerations of underground versus overhead, other than to say that it's an ongoing discussion with Georgia Power, and one that we're happy to provide updates to the community on.
Okay. Also, you mentioned that you haven't done any blasting yet, correct?
Correct.
So we actually live to the house very adjacent to the construction site, the one that you labeled as about 316 feet away. And we've already noticed the high accumulation of dust as well as the concrete breaking around the driveway.
Yeah, so the dust, Michael could probably provide information, but the dust is the effect of construction.
Of course.
None of it's definitely from blasting. I mean, again, to reiterate, we don't have the blasting permit. We never do any work without permits. So I'm not sure. So yeah, the dust coming out now is just standard dust from construction, and we're putting in mitigation to try and control it as best possible.
What are those mitigations?
I'm going to pass over to Michael at this point because he's got the logistics.
Yeah, so I do know that the dust from the construction activity is a big issue. It's more of an issue in the summer months because typically when we spray, the water evaporates very quick. So what happens is they spray the dirt, they spray the area where we're doing our work, and then right after that, our dozers come and kind of scrape up the dirt because we have to cut and fill. So while the dirt is on the top layer, by the time you lift it up in the evaporation, you'd almost have to constantly be out there spraying the dirt, which there's not really we can't spray constantly while we're moving dirt. That's a little bit of the challenge. And also we haven't had a lot of rain, so the dirt is just very dry, so it tends to move with the littlest bit of wind. I think when we get into the fall months where it's a little bit more cooler and it's a little bit more dense, it will help with that. But and we are trying to increase the amount of, I guess, water migration, but I realize that it's going to be a little bit of an issue for us for the next couple months. I just want to be honest with you. I talked to one of the neighbors today, and that's one of his comments. I mean, he was very open and honest, and I said, hey, I'm trying to do the best we can. We've got trucks on the street, but in terms of the site, which is where the vast majority of the dust comes from, as soon as we spray it and we put a dozer there and we scrape 10 feet and we move and we drive the trucks, we are continuously creating dust. We just have to keep spraying. But I don't think we'll be able to get to a point where a construction site is, for lack of a better word, dust-free. Yes, ma'am.
Do you guys, 'cause I'm assuming that for blasting, you're not doing it randomly, it's probably very well planned out. Do you have a site plan that shows exactly where you'll be blasting and when?
I do have a plan. I don't have it with me, but we do have a plan from the geologist that shows all the rock in the area. It's kind of scattered throughout the site, but we do have a plan, and they do work from one area to another area. But I don't have that graphic with me right now. But yes, we do. Yes, ma'am.
And do you know how close, what the distance is, the closest house is to where you'll be blasting?
I understand what you're asking. Yeah, where the closest point of the penetration to the house, right? I don't have. I mean, we have the data. I just don't have the data with me, but we do have the data. We had to provide all that as part of our blasting permit that we turn into the city of East Point. But I don't have the data with me. I'm sorry.
Before you go, are you able to provide that? Are you able to make sure that the community can get that information? Because the questions being asked, I just feel like they're questions that people have and they want answers so that they can feel comfortable with this establishment. But if we leave here without answers, we're going to leave here with the same dissatisfaction. At minimum, I think a commitment to getting people the answers that you don't have readily available today will show some consideration and value for the residents. That's just my recommendation. To make a commitment to get the answers and then actually follow through on getting them answers to the questions that you don't have immediately.
Yes.
Absolutely. I do want to make sure we go around the room as well.
Sure.
Some questions out the back.
Is there any updated status on, have you received all of the surveys from the homeowners that you gave the free service to? You guys have any update on that? I saw Ms. Byers said something about there may have been a new timeline. Has that been presented to everyone to let them know what the new dates that they need to get their home survey before it actually start?
So, yeah, so we sent out, I'll just tell you what exactly happened. We sent out 4 notices to 150 residents. 30 residents responded back. And we did the blasting survey for those 30 residents. The remaining 120, we didn't get a response. I feel like we've waited, and we still don't have a blasting permit, so if anyone still contacts us, we'll do it. But we are kind of at the point where it doesn't sound like we're going to be able to get 100% of the blasting survey. Some people just do not want us on their property, don't want us near their house, don't want us in their house. I can understand that. So let me answer the first question. The first question from the blasting radius around where we do the blast, we went out 1,500 feet. So every property that was in 1,500 feet of the different blast areas on the site, those are the homes we contacted. So if you didn't get a notice, you were outside the radius. And so typically the blast, I mean, I shouldn't say typically, but Microsoft expanded out. So most blasting surveys are within 500 feet. Microsoft takes it the additional 1,000 feet just as additional precautions. I don't have an issue if you want a blasting survey. I would just need the data. I would need to find out where you live and yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I don't know who you called. I'm sorry. Oh. I can get your data. I can get your information afterwards. Okay.
I have another question, and I know this is gonna sound crazy, I'm sorry, y'all, don't spend a lot of time on it. I live right in the woods, so, deer are going crazy. What do y'all do? All on my property. Deer, so many deer rangers, there's totally destroyed. We have so many deer in our yard now, all day long. All evening.
Can I add that there's also coyotes as well?
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do with the coyotes or deers.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, let me get it.
Thank you. When it comes to the construction of the Microsoft building itself, as well as the power lines, how do you feel that will impact the property value of the homes in that one block of Ben Hill?
I will say that I can't speak specifically for East Point. I will say for other projects where we're adjacent to residential areas, we haven't seen a negative effect on property values.
In all due respect, one of the major asks from the first meeting had to do with the location of the substation and these power lines. We're still at the same point. We're still at the same point where the substation is on Ben Hill Road and the power lines will be run off of it. We're still at that point. Microsoft has not responded to us in that way. As I look at this map, it's like I said to our city officials before, it's clear to me that Microsoft has a plan. They're operationalizing it every day. You've had this plan from the very beginning. So here's the question. As you have it laid out on this site map, yes, I see where it would be, it's almost impossible to locate it anywhere. But what says that one of these buildings can't be to the front and the substation to the back of the property? That's just the way you've got it planned.
That was brought up at that meeting, that particular
So,
meeting that you're talking about.
we're still left with where we are. No one wants that substation up on Ben Hill Road. Least of all me, because it's right across the street from me. So I don't know why this particular arrangement of the buildings has to be locked in stone. Thank you.
I don't think I'll need that. When it comes to the blasting in particular, do you have a time of day that you'll be doing this?
From 10, so it's one blast per day, and it'll be sometime in the range from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I don't know the exact time, just because it takes, so just the formation of a rock, depending on if it's weather rock, if it's granite, they have to drill the hole and they drill like maybe 4 or 5 holes, and then they pack it with the explosive. So depending on how that goes and how the rock is, depends on what time of day we'll actually blast.
And then how many days in a row? So will it be every day for a week, every day for?
Yes,
They say
so-
4 months.
Yes,
Every
so
day.
when we would start, it would be Monday to Friday.
Every day.
And then it lasts for, let's see, it was
December.
December.
Duration of the blast per day.
And so, and then the blast lasts, like, so we'll do 3 seconds.
Like a 3-second blast.
So 3 second.
Once per day.
So it's like that, it's the blast is over, and then what happens is the rock blows up into maybe boulders or small pieces. And in order to reuse the rock, we have to get a bigger piece of rock down to a smaller size. So then we chip it a little bit to break it up. And usually when it blasts, the blast helps fragment the rock. So it may not be a lot of work after the blast. I mean, we have to move it around site, but we don't typically know, we don't know how the rock is going to break up into after the blast. But the blast is just like one, it's more prep for the blast than the actual blast itself.
So regarding the smaller rocks, after you break it down, are you removing it from the site, or are you chipping it and breaking it down on site, which that is louder than the blast?
We chip it and we break it down on site and we recycle it on site, keep it on site.
Got you. So what about the noise from chipping and grinding it down? I've been near sites where that is extremely loud and long. The blast is three seconds, but the chipping and the grinding is probably all day.
Chipping is a bit of a noise, it does create.
Okay, so how will that affect the neighbors that are directly around these sites? Is there?
It is going to, I mean, it's going to create noise. I don't have any, there's not a way to sound the chipping.
The blast is not the concern, it's the grinding.
This is not a question, but more of a comment. So when I was looking at the pictures of the wall or the screen that goes around the substation, it kind of looks like it's more like a sound barrier that you would see on the interstate, and not necessarily something that you would like see in a residential area. And where I work, my building is right next to a substation. I mean, it's within feet. But you would have no idea that it was a substation unless if you were standing right in front of the gates and looking in. And they don't have any kind of a screen for trees or anything like that. They were able to build a wall that looked like a building. And they have really fancy Spanish tile on the top to make it look like a roof. It looks really nice for a substation. And so I would love to see invest a little bit more in making that area look better, because it is in front of residential homes, and it does also front Ben Hill Road. And I get that you're trying to avoid that gas line and stuff in the back, where we would all really love to have it instead. But because that doesn't seem to be an option, I would love to see that substation look better.
Will there ever be any blasting at night? When the sun goes down, that's the end of it. I just wanted to know.
Between set hours in the day, I think you said between 9 and 3.
10 and 3.
3 seconds within that time span. So those are the boundaries of when we would have the blasting. Well, there would be no chipping at night time. The chipping, any kind of construction work happens within the regulated hours, which I don't know offhand, but they're driven by the construction, the time allowed to have construction ongoing, which is at night time.
One of my questions is, who surveyed the land right behind my house?
Yeah, mine too.
You are like 425 feet, and I want to know who surveyed the land, and can we see that survey to make sure that our property is not involved?
You're not going to encroach on our property.
And,
You'll put up that picture again of,
and excuse me, when you first talked to us, when we first met with you, you all told us that it would be one building and 40 or less employees. Now it's 3 buildings and it's 150 employees. Do you know how that's going to affect our community? That's a lot of people coming and going. That's a lot of buildings. I just want to know why we were told first it would be 1 building and under 40 employees. Now it's 3 huge buildings and 150 employees, and my house is right there.
and my house is right next to hers. And I want to know how far our back are you going? There's 3 acres left of my property that is not lawn, that's not mowed.
Up here?
No, it's
Up there,
it's
on
up-
Ben Hill Road.
On Ben Hill Road, up.
Right, those
Okay.
1, 2, 3,
1,
4.
2, 3, 4 houses.
So, okay, a couple of questions there. In terms of the buildings, I assume you're referring to a discussion we had, I think maybe a year or a little bit more than that ago. And to be honest, when we were in that discussion, we were talking about the first phase of the building. We probably, yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I think we didn't have like the context of what we were providing information on. We were providing on the building that was going through what we were developing at the time. When we are looking at what we put together, we're looking at putting together like the building permit packages. So when we would have discussed, and I'm speculating a little bit, if we talked about 1 building, it's because we were talking about that phase 1, which is what we are building at the moment. So not to, well, actually ATL 06. And in terms of the numbers, it's as simple as we use like a planning guide based on, it's different numbers depending where we are. Some places it's 40, some places it's 60. I think the number we would have used in that first discussion would have been a planning guide based on our fleet of data centers. The number we're using now is more based on what we know of the operation. So that would explain why it's gone from 40 to 50. Certainly not in any trying to minimize. It's just simply like updated information we've got in that year that passed since we first spoke. And we were talking about phase 1. This is ultimately the 3 buildings that we will build out for the full site is what we're trying to give the picture of here. Again, I'll say like that 50 number will probably change, not going up, it will probably come down for additional buildings because we always have more people working within the first building because there's more admin. So again, these are planning numbers, but that's the history of that information.
So this house that's around on the curve, how far are you guys going that way toward Ben Hill Road?
So I think we had the site plan there. And in terms of survey, we have the ALTA survey of our property lines. So we have a legal survey of our property lines. It's recorded with the county. We can certainly share it as well. But I believe our property extends to definitely farther down from here. But none of the work would be ongoing on anyone else's property. And we have a legal survey recorded which shows where the property boundaries are, which is what our engineers use to develop the site plan. I think actually if you go...
So how many feet is it from our property to this center?
Yeah.
I do not have that information to hand, but we have a survey we can have our engineers look at, and I can get back with that exact feet and inches to show where the end of our property line is and where the extent of our disturbance is. It's always in the permit information.
I was going to say, we have that, the diagram that we were just looking at on a board over here. So if we could get the 2 of you to sort of point to it on the board versus the screen, we can better answer your question, and the answers we don't have here, we'll get back to you.
Again, we have the actual survey, so happy to provide those exact distances. Yes, please.
I don't think I need the microphone. Thank you.
No.
So I'm speaking in advocacy for myself as well as my fellow community members, in particular, the older community members that have been there a very long time. I think the bigger concern is the quality of life impact And it's not personal to you, so I just want to make sure that I say that as a disclaimer and representation of myself. It's not personal to you, and I understand that you're doing, this is business for you, but it's personal to us because people make conscientious decisions when they chose their home, right? You do all this vetting, put all this effort into choosing where you want to establish yourself. And of course, as life goes on, developments happen and you have no control over that. But now that you're subjected to it as a property owner and community member, you want to know that you're being considered because this is definitely infringing upon our quality of life. Our quality of life is going to be changed with the optics of the building being there, the traffic that inevitably is going to come with it, the potential environmental harm that you can't speak to. And we know peer review doesn't mean science. It depends on the extent of the peer review. So we do understand that when it says it's inconclusive, that suggests that there still is potential harm. So the concern is, what are you going to do? Like, what is the retribution, so to speak? How do you restore the community for what they are losing in regard to their quality of life and the potential harm? Now, we understand that, of course, through taxes and things like that, there are some benefits for the city, right? But we also know that Microsoft is going to get more out of this than the community, because if not, it wouldn't be a business venture. So I really am concerned about knowing the older residents may not participate in the academy. A lot of the things that you said you're going to do to add to the community are projections. They're hypothetical and they are not for certain. So this question may be for you as well as our city representatives who were elected to represent our best interests. What are some hard line in stone or basically things that you can actually produce beyond projections and hypotheticals? What can be some actual measurable, observable commitments that can be made to the community, a universal benefit for the community, not just those people? Because we also understand with the jobs, you're going to hire the people that are best qualified for the jobs. Realistically, those people may not come from Fulton County or East Point. So that's not a guaranteed benefit, right? We understand that. And the other commitments that you made, you said that it's very fluffy. And I understand, this is your proposal of what Microsoft does. But it's still not a guarantee of what the community is going to benefit. So maybe the question is for our city representatives too. What have you advocated for on the community's behalf to ensure that there's a benefit? And that, other than promises, I think we deserve more than promises. So maybe both of you, the city and Microsoft, can address that.
Sure, yeah. Thank you for your statements, and I appreciate the point of view that you have, and so thank you for speaking up. At this point with the project, because we are at the phase we are, when we're talking about community benefits, they are projections, they are promises. And so for this particular project, I can't give you any more than that. I can point to other communities where we have data centers, where they have seen these benefits. And so, in fact, I can provide you with a video from the Port of Quincy, which is Quincy, Washington, which is where we've operated a data center since 2007. And they have seen tremendous benefits from the data centers, both Microsoft as well as others that have come in as well, in terms of tax revenue, in terms of city services, in terms of their school system. And so we can point to other locations where we are operating to show how we have fulfilled on those promises. So that's the best I can give you at this point. And I'm sorry that I seemed patronizing earlier in the answer to the other question about where we have data centers. So, but thank you for your comment. Terry?
I just want to, first of all, I think that's a great question. I would say that has been under discussion. Again, my name is Terrence Harris, and I manage our government and external affairs for Georgia. And so I know we've had several conversations with the mayor around building a broader partnership around a number of issues, everything from broadband to skilling to education to grants, et cetera. We're going to bring all the programs that we do, not just around data centers, but what we do in cities across the country to East Point to ensure that we have the kind of benefits that you talked about. And we'll be doing that. And trust me, the mayor has just been a strong advocate on some of these issues, and she is on me all the time about what we're going to do. And we have a meeting coming up, and all the folks inside of Microsoft, inside of our philanthropic organization, will be on that call to talk through what we can do and how that's going to benefit the city of East Point and the citizens in East Point. So.
And I would just ask that, and I imagine that in particular, the conversation is about, you know, accommodating the residents, like these women who live immediately in the vicinity, not just in the city of East Point at large, but those in immediate, remote, adjacent, you know, locations too.
Yeah, I'm taking notes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Are there any talks about getting a traffic light at the main entrance? Because you're running around a blind spot with cars going 60, 70 miles per hour. One big portion.
So the question is whether we're looking at a stoplight at our entrance because of that curve. So not to my knowledge, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen or won't happen. So thanks for asking the question. We can certainly talk about that with the city.
I live directly behind, right there. You were saying that you don't know how the blast is going to affect the neighboring houses immediately, or do you have an answer for that?
We don't anticipate the blasting will impact the immediate houses at all, but I will let Michael talk a little bit about that.
We don't anticipate the blasting from the other two sites, very similar with the blasting, no impact at all. But that's why we do recommend that if we offer a pre-blast survey, that the homeowners take it. But no anticipation of any damage or anything to the house.
I have a small lake in my backyard, and I am across, I'm across from where all of that is, substation at on Green Hill, you know, like where it's wood, and you keep going, when you get to the lake in my house. And I'm wondering even if, how is that blasting while you're doing, is that gonna affect that ecosystem with that lake? Because I've been struggling to keep that lake going.
I mean, we don't anticipate disturbing the ecosystem. The blasting is just really controlling, just trying to, and it's a much smaller blast, right? Because we're close to a residential neighborhood, and so we're not expecting it to travel too far outside of 500 feet from outside of 500 feet of the radius. And if it does, we're not expecting any impacts. Gamble and Company, the people who've been working with the blaster have 30 years of experience, have had no issues, no claims. Everybody takes blasting very seriously. No, ma'am. I understand your apprehension. I understand why everybody's nervous. It's completely reasonable. Nope. No, ma'am. We have not blasted. All we're doing on the site is cutting trees and moving dirt. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yep. But no blasting. Just waiting. No blasting yet.
So that's
Yes.
So the geological surveys that you had done, does it show like a solid rock formation that goes underneath the ground and over into the subdivision? Is there a possibility that some of these homes are built on top of the rock formation?
I'd have to go back and look at the geological study. We do pilot holes in our, I guess we do pilot holes on our property. So what they take a core out, and when they take the core out, it just shows what the formation is of that core. So it's dirt and weathered rock. I don't know the stratosphere, and I think that's what you're asking about, the stratosphere of the rock. I don't have that data.
Rocks underneath in Georgia, sometimes they go on for miles. So if you blast it, it's going to crack like a cookie. And that crack could, if someone's home is on top of that rock, that crack could potentially spread underneath the homes. That's what I'm asking.
I don't know. That's a good point. Once again, that's why we do the pre-blast survey, and we put the seismograph to measure the vibration outside of our site to track it. We do a baseline before we do any blasting to measure. And then immediately after the blast, we go check the seismograph to see what the data says, to see if it traveled to the seismograph. So we do constantly monitor during the blasting process.
Yeah. I just want to add one other thing as it comes to the community benefits plan and the community investments. Your alderman, both Butler and Gordon, has just done an incredible job advocating on your behalf, and I'm going to also make sure they're included in those discussions. So ensure you're getting those areas of interest to them so they can get them to us. Thanks.
One last comment, and I don't know, maybe I missed it. Was there a sign-in sheet so that you could have email addresses? Yes. Yes, it's where?
There is a sign-in sheet. That's, make sure they get one for you. There's also in the handout, which I also make sure you get one. There's an email. There's an email address there for any questions you want to direct to us as well, and we constantly monitor that as well. So, want to make sure there are any other questions. Yep.
That's okay. Maybe the city can answer this. Inevitably, it's going to cause a traffic conundrum in that area. We already know with that Welcome All connector, Camp Creek, it's already always congested. And that's just with people who primarily live in that area. So have we really considered every alternative or every option for mitigating any more inconvenience and congestion in that area? I understand that it's only 150 on average, right, coming during business hours, but that's the peak traffic time, is in the morning and the afternoon. You have the school buses, you have the commercial, the industrial building, whatever that is, you have those going on, Welcome All Connector and Ben Hill. So have you really considered the traffic impact for the people in the area, no alternatives to mitigating the harm?
So,
There is an improvement that's going to happen at Welcome All Connector and Camp.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but it is on the sign.
Okay. That traffic is going to back up all the way on Camp Creek.
Yeah, and it's a really good question. It's hard for us to answer it within the confines of our project. What I can say is that as part of this development, not only with the city but with the county as well, we have to provide a traffic analysis. They take that into account and into ongoing traffic assessments, probably what feeds some of the improvements they're doing, and that informs what improvements they trigger, and that also gives a good snapshot of if there's going to be a appreciable increase in traffic from our development in conjunction with other developments. So, short of us being able to study the whole traffic system, we kind of rely on, I think the county and probably the state get involved here as well. Yeah.
Because people are going to try to use those as alternatives. So it's going to have a dynamic impact in that diameter around the building. So I just want to put that out there that we are aware that that's going to be a problem. We are counting on you guys to address it as best as possible.
Yeah, noted. All right. I don't see any more questions right now, but again, I really encourage everyone to get up, walk around a little bit, look at the photos. We'll be walking around as well and trying to answer any questions that you have as you look in more detail at the photos. Before everyone disperses, I just want to thank everyone again for your time today. I want to thank you for listening to us. Certainly glad to be back in the community and really want to keep answering all the questions. So thank you, everyone.
Did everybody sign the sign-in sheet before you leave? We'll make sure everyone had a chance to sign the sign-in sheet. Make sure you do that so we can make sure we have that information, and then we'll let you know what will come after this. But thank you all for coming tonight. Also, I did want to recognize, have a couple of our council members who also came, Councilor Cummings and Cook as well.